Tic Talk, Tic Talk, Tic Talk, Talk.
A real Celtic talk show by real Celtic fans from the Carluke Shamrock Supporters Club on Hail, Hail Media.
Tic Talk, Tic Talk, Tic Talk, 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 Talk.
Hail, hail, and welcome to Tic Talk with the Carluke Shamrock Celtic Supporters Club. My name's Vincent, and this podcast is being recorded on Wednesday the 13th of March. You can find more information about the club at carlukeshamrock.com and details of the podcast and other Celtic family podcasts at hailhailmedia.com. Now tonight we're going to have a wee look back at the second leg against Juventus. We're going to look at the Ross County defeat. A wee look forward to the home game against Aberdeen coming up, plus the usual hot topics, and we'll round it all off with some more shambolic shenanigans. OK, so tonight our illustrious panel for you is...
Peter, Brian, Kevin.
OK, guys. Just before we kick off, I mean, I know it's not all about who's your favourite and who's the best host and all that, but maybe just a couple of words about the kind of arrangements for you tonight. I mean, are you quite happy with the Borders biscuits?
Quite impressive. Very impressive.
Richard's
got
I'm not happy with the shambolic shenanigans right enough. That's a wee bit too far, Vince.
I took that too far. But we're happy with the biscuits. I mean, that's...
You're nice. A half chocolate, Viennese, twirl, whatever it is.
I'm a bit disappointed. I'm off them for Lent, so get behind me, Satan.
We'll have yours. We'll have your share, obviously. I don't remember Richard doing that. That's the only reason why I brought it up. It's just
he did jelly and ice cream. That was far better.
It was good. All right, we'll give him that.
Well, okay. You done pin the donkey, Vincent.
Pin the donkey, eh?
Pin the tail on the donkey. Oh man,
As Rangers died.
Do you know that's less than a year ago we done that? Pin the donkey and jelly and ice cream.
So it is. It might not be that long to wait for another one. Okay.
Possibilities there.
So we're going to kick off Champions League last 16, second leg. The McAuley brothers were there on tour on an expedition to Turin. So give us a wee insight into your trip, guys. How did it go? Kevin.
I'll let Brian speak first, and then I'll tell you how it really was.
Well, as you know, I don't drink, so I was the driver, and so if anyone's going to remember everything that happened, it's going to be me.
Can I just check? Were you the legal driver? Is that?
Yes.
Was there no some? Kevin, did you know disclose to me?
I disclosed nothing, Vincent. Absolutely nothing.
Yes, I was a legal driver.
Okay.
Yes, we had two drivers registered in the car.
Oh, right, okay.
Luckily. Do you know, it was a great trip. I really enjoyed it, and I was just trying to think when we come back, and Kevin might be able to answer that. That might be the first time all four of us have been away together. Because I thought Seville, but then Joseph wasn't at Seville.
And it says
and then maybe Stuttgart, but then I don't think one of us... either Joseph or Kieran weren't at Stuttgart.
Aye.
And it was just, it was a really good laugh. And
what was your itinerary? Talk me through that. When did you leave?
so we left Wednesday morning, the morning of the game, leaving from Edinburgh. Flew to Geneva. Had turned an hour drive into a 2.5 hour drive from Geneva to Chamonix. Kevin decided to take us through the centre.
It's not to do with the driver, obviously, you know what I mean? The driver's not to do it, he just wants to be the one to drive it.
Who's the navigator? Is it the driver or is it a man sitting next to you?
It's a co-driver, Brian.
Sat-nav, that's what the co-pilot is.
Tell me you've never hired a car with sat-nav.
It was sat-nav, but Kevin thought he could do better.
So it was a wee detour then.
So we had a Kev. And so a wee detour there. And so we get checked in fine at the hotel in Chamonix, and they get your carry out for the drive to the stunning drive down to Turin, through the Mont Blanc tunnel, which is, what was it, 12 kilometres or something?
12 kilometres, aye.
Just unbelievable. So 6 or 7 mile through a tunnel, under the biggest mountain of Europe. Shine yourself. You see the cracks.
So that wasn't the scenic bit then, when you were in the tunnel?
No, that was beautiful. But when you get out the other side, that's you in Italy, and just the Italian side of the Alps, and it was a stunning drive down. And And then we got to Turin and the old sat-nav kicked in. The navigators were pissed by then, so I had to rely on sat-nav. And I'll tell you,
We've realised, the one thing we have realised is there's a difference between Juventus FC and the Juventus Stadium. Obviously, Juventus FC must be the training pitch in the opposite direction. So we're going the right way, and all the Celtic buses for the guys that had been in the day trip and stuff were heading in the opposite direction. We're like, do I think we're going the right way here? No, the sat-nav's definitely taking us the right way.
It's still nice to see, obviously.
Beautiful. Go through Turin in the pissing rain in the wrong way.
And to get in the game at half times is always good.
Through a bit of expert driving, and I'm waiting on the speeding tickets coming through, but I managed to get us parked up about half an hour before kick-off. Which was no mean feat considering
it was
an hour before kick-off we were 28 kilometres away.
28 and rising. At one point I think we were 4.
Going in the wrong direction. So we got there eventually, and but trying to get into the stadium, there was guys who'd arrived an hour before us who still weren't in the stadium, so it was
was it security?
Overzealous.
Treat you like animals. Was
it dry for the Celtic fans? No,
absolutely.
A lot of people
sorry.
That before.
I possibly was, but I think that people find ways around these things. I mean, ours was to drive 5 hours away. Kansas Carlsberg.
Substantial carrier.
Aye, it was. I thought getting in it was a shocker, and there was.
This is a recording of the sat-nav instructions.
I wait to hear that.
But, I'll try and let you hear it. I've got it to sound up as best I can. This is limited instructions I was left to with the sat-nav.
Keep straight on this road for a long time.
So if you couldn't make that out, it was keep on this road. Keep straight on this road for a long time. I was just sick of that voice. So
and in all honesty, the organisation getting in was shocking. You had to get through a single gate to even get to the turnstiles where they were checking everybody's ticket, and then you get through there and you got to the turnstiles, and then the turnstiles, if you get through the first bit, it's a barcode, and loads of the guys went through the wrong bit, so they were at the top tier, at the bottom tier, so the barcodes weren't working, so it was just an absolute shambles to get in.
It was absolutely pouring down, so the tickets were disintegrating. Yeah. So guys were getting to the front of the queue with a valid ticket. The stewards aren't letting them in because the barcode's all disintegrated, and it's causing the queue to get worse. So people are pushing, trying to get in, and it was just bedlam. They ended up opening the gate where we were,
letting them in.
And people just...
I mean, the caravan area, and you see them twitching as well. They're just looking for a reason to scalp you. And to be honest, we spoke about it when the draw was made, because we sat around this table and everybody was like, I was going to go until it was Juve, and then I wasn't going to go. And that's the second time I've been there.
That was the only negative,
I
have to say, because the stadium is a stunning stadium, and the Celtic fans were absolutely magnificent throughout. From before Juve scored in the second goal, I think you knew what minute it was.
56th or 57th minute.
So 30 odd minutes during the game, it was here we go to 10 in a row. Just continue.
You could hear that.
Non-stop. And the Juve fans every 5 minutes stood up and applauding the Celtic support, and it was just magnificent.
There was actually quite a lot of Celtic fans in the Juve end as well, and some of them were doing congas in the top tier, doing the front. They were doing congas along and congas back. And it was really
typical Celtic fans made so many friends from a club that are renowned throughout Europe for not being welcoming, and the press afterwards demonstrated that.
To see some of the tweets of the coverage in the Italian media, it was absolutely fantastic.
Apparently the Juve manager Conte had said the world-class support that Celtic should be applauded by the world or something like that. But just magnificent. And
I thought when we came in, it was about 13-14 minutes after kick-off that I arrived in, and I thought we played well. I thought we were we were looking more dangerous. I felt like Celtic Park, they were just happy to give us the ball and let us knock it about. And I can't remember who said it in the bus coming home from the first leg. That the Italians are just cynical and clinical. And that's they were the same. They were the kind of same, certainly clinical in that game last week. They were probably less cynical than they'd been at Celtic Park, but the job was done for them at Celtic Park. But it was a good trip, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. All things taken into consideration, because I went with no expectation that there was any way we were going to get through.
There's always that wee bit with me. There's always that wee bit.
I was the exact same. The closer it got, I was thinking,
we spoke about it.
You never know.
Do you know? Just talking about cynical but clinical, and touching in the game last night with Milan and Barcelona. That one, the boy hit the post. Milan looked really dangerous last night, I thought, and that could have been the same thing to tie over. And that what Juve did with us was. Score when they had the break very, very quickly, and they looked like scoring every time they did it.
But again, it's no.
You could argue that Juventus could step up a gear when they wanted to step up a gear. You could argue that point.
I think that's a game, Peter. How they played against us.
I have to be honest. If they scored in the ratio they scored against us, they'll win that Champions League. To me, I think they had about 8 shots in the 2 games, and they scored 5. You know, so you can't argue with that ratio, especially Parkhead. I mean, Parkhead that night they had 4 shots and goals scored 3 of them. You know what I mean? They were very confident.
But it's no rocket science. I mean, you watched the Barcelona game last night. What I was watching was what they were doing when they didn't have the ball. See their work rate, it's phenomenal. And that's what you find with teams like Juventus. Do you know? And actually, we're going to come on to that later in terms of the kind of the shambolic, just thinking that through in terms of work rate of players and stuff like that. But as I say, it's as obvious as that big nose in your face, Brian. It's that obvious. Work hard. That's all these players need to do. I mean, you watch Barcelona, Juventus.
And how do these guys have that additional fitness? How do they have that the fitness levels? Is that just an ability, or is it?
I don't know.
Because they do seem fitter.
I think it's less fitness and more attitude.
What you're talking about last night at Barca game. No, I was kind of watching to see, because they have areas of the team have wee rests during the game. You see Messi and he'll dip out
almost
the game for 10 minutes maybe, as if he's re-energised and having a wee rest, and then he's back in that burst again. And that seemed, I tried to watch it, it's difficult. You've got to just sit and watch and enjoy it. And
I think it's a combination of a few things. I think playing against a higher level of opponent every single week keeps you at a higher level. And then allied to that is they just have an ethic, and it's demanded of them that they work hard all the time, because there'll be players in the Spanish leagues, further down the Spanish leagues, if they came to Celtic, would be just phenomenal. Like Paulo Di Canio was when he joined. I mean, he was just like a standout, better than anyone else that was doing the rounds. And there'll be players like that. I mean, Malaga won the night. They went through. So that's the same in the last 8. The team that we all sat round the table and thought that's what we want. And there'll be. So I think playing at a higher level every single week, but there's no doubt their actual fitness level as well is just something that takes them to a level.
The other thing, I noticed last night was, see the awareness. Just awareness of where they are on the pitch and where other people are on the pitch. See the tackle Jordi Alba got in, the cross on Robinho. Do you know, he knew what it was, and Robinho made a great run, and he got it just that awareness to look where he was, whereas our guys seemed to get caught. Well, they wouldn't look where the player was, even look, they would just concentrate on the ball coming in. It's just, I thought last night was magnificent. I know we're digressing.
Juventus were a bad team for us, if you know what I mean. We needed somebody like a Barcelona who came on to us. You know, whereas Juventus just soaked it up. That's what they were built on. They were built on their defence, and then just it made it easy for the forwards to break forward.
I would agree with that. Actually, they were probably.
We could have got I don't know, say a Man United or something, just for talk's sake. They'd come on to us all the time.
Yeah,
we might have had a better game. You know what I mean? Because that's what we've done against Barcelona. Let them come on to us and then we hurt them.
Well, I think that was especially the case, Peter, when we lost the first goal as quickly as we did, in as unfortunate a manner as we did. because we're then immediately having to chase the game. It'd been interesting if we'd have got the first goal to see, obviously, how they reacted, but I suppose that's not what happened.
You talked there about the kind of fitness and the difference and stuff like that. I've got an image in my mind of the Barcelona game at Parkhead, and I'm pretty sure it was Charlie Mulgrew who was absolutely blowing out his arse, just dead in his feet, and was probably still a half an hour to go. Because actually that night we put in a shift and a half. You're probably right, Kevin, in terms of how they match up, how these guys match up to us. There must be a step up in fitness here, because our guys just weren't used to that kind of work rate. And actually, I can vividly remember him absolutely, but really looking dead on his feet with half an hour to go. Do you know what I mean?
Chris Commons that night was another one as well. That playing a game that they're no used to playing in terms of chasing. Another thing that people all have said it since I was wee, when Peter was coaching the St Athanasius Boys Club. It's a lot easier if you've got the ball than what it is chasing the ball. If you've not got the ball, it's far more difficult. You've got to do a lot more work.
But did you notice them, and it was the exact same as Barcelona, when they lost the ball, they hunted in packs. And you're right, it's almost a tag team. Do you know that you saw guys like about 4 or 5 men round them as soon as they lost the ball, and it was almost they were raging. It was an affront that you took the ball off of Barcelona, and they just worked keys it back.
I just think at that level of football, they are just far more athletic than the players that we've got. Just as a stand, I watched that Bayern game tonight, and I look at the big guy Muller, and he's like 6'4", and you get by him, and he's back at you within. You don't actually get by him. But you know what I mean? He'll look as if you're getting by him, and then he's back in at you. And they're just athletes. And I can remember a few years ago, and I'm sure it was Lubo playing against Danny Mills. Danny Mills, I'm sure who was he playing with? It was a pre-season friendly, and Lubo, I think, was one of the most skillful players I've ever seen pull on a Celtic jersey. And I just remember that day. Lubo used to sell dummies to defenders in the Premier League. They had to pay to get back in. And that day, he was doing the same to Danny Mills, who was just a kind of journeyman player who was athletic, not a bad defender, but and he just didn't have anywhere near. He would feign the dummy, Danny Mills would fall for it, and then realise he'd turn back inside. Before he knew, he was back in. Whereas a Scottish defender, they would be flailing about for the next 3 or 4 seconds trying to get back at Lubo, and Lubo would have been away. And I just think that it must be something to do with playing at that high level every single week.
But that's the area that you would think we could close the gap. If there's nothing else, we can be fit. I don't know if any of you heard they do this my starting 11 on BBC Scotland. Have you heard this? Some of these they pick their.
Is that mainstream media?
You pick the players that they played with. So it was John Collins last night. It was really quite an interesting one. He picked so many French players, but he had an anecdote. He was talking about he played his front two. In fact, his front three. His front two were Henry, Trezeguet, and the other guy, a Brazilian guy. He's played at Parkhead. I remember seeing him playing for Bordeaux. I can't remember his.
I think he tweeted that last night.
You'll notice
the Parkhead Parrot tweeted it last night.
But, however, what he said was when Trezeguet and Henry were young, kind of 17, 18, coming into that team, he said they were the guys. He said they not only stayed after their longer training than ours, they stayed longer than that, and used to beg him to fling balls into the box to late afternoon, just fling balls into the box so they can, right foot, left foot. He said their attitude then, at that age, he said, you just knew they were going to be a success. You just knew it. And it wasn't, and because they were the youngest in the squad at the beginning, they had to carry these, wherever they went, they had to carry the hampers. He said, but they just did it. It wasn't, that was just accepted. They weren't Billy Big Shoes, as you call them. But no egos.
I think there's a degree of professionalism about their whole. They take a view, I think, it's a short career. So they're not swallowing every weekend and going to the dancing on a Saturday night and stuff like that. Their lifestyle is my body is what makes my career, and I need to prolong it as long as I can. And it's quite interesting what you're saying there, because I seen Twitter yesterday that Kyle Hutton tweeting at something like 12:30 yesterday afternoon. That's training finished. I'm going to go home and lie on the couch watching Homeland, and apparently he was getting dogs abuse for it after being beat with Annan, and possibly the worst result in their 180-day history.
You had to catch yourself there.
I don't know if that was if the game at Stirling Albion, who were bottom of the league, was worse on Saturday, or whether that was worse. But after a game like that, you think these guys would be choking to improve themselves.
But savvy enough to think, actually, maybe they were in training, they were talking about it in the radio the night, maybe they were on Sunday, maybe they were in, do you know what I mean?
Stokes as well the night before the Ross County game, tweeting
The pint of Guinness.
a topless bird drinking Guinness.
When was that? Was it?
Aye, the night before the game. So, aye, there is that level of professionalism that maybe, I don't know, you'd think it would, our players over here would learn from the, because there's plenty of continental players play.
But
You'll get bad, but you'll get
Good and bad, aye.
exactly. You know,
Right.
you can't tar them all with the same brush. You know.
But you're more likely to get a continental player coming over here and actually being dragged into the inverted commas British culture of a professional
maybe.
football player than you are him coming over
Converting.
and converting other people to understand. It might happen the other way, somebody going to the continent, going to France, going to Spain and seeing the way that these other people I mean, it's more of a social thing, but anyway, let's move on.
Well, it's that kind of cultural thing, particularly in somewhere like, you know, Scotland, or we're getting healthier, but do you know what I mean?
Aye. Let's go out on Friday night and get wrecked, rather than let's go out and have a beer or a glass of wine or whatever and a catch up. It's like let's
Just
go and
look
get
at somebody
mollicated.
like John Collins, but just his kind of lifestyle. But also how these players managed to prolong their career, and you're right. The body was the tool for that, if you like. Okay, I'd just like to summarise then. We went out to Europe. What about this year's adventure? A couple of words. Peter, how do you feel about how we done this year?
Oh, we done. You can't argue how we done. I thought we were tremendous against Barcelona, tremendous against Spartak Moscow. Disappointed the home game against Benfica. Disappointed in the away game at Benfica. We played really well. The other games you can't argue with. The two against Juventus, I thought they played really, at Parkhead especially, I thought they played really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And 3-0 was never a 3-0 game. But you can't argue with Juventus' finishing. You really can't. All in all, happy, aye. I still think, I know you all shouted me down at the time, but I still
We'll do it again.
I still want to go to Europa League this year. Well, we had the team, and you all said no. We all want to qualify for the last 16. Well,
No, to be fair, I do concur that the Europa is our level,
I thought we
and
could
finishing
go to this year.
third. It's just you want to see if you can actually go that stage further in the Champions League, and but it's always going to be the same. And if it comes down to what do you want? Do you want money or do you want a chance? Declan says to me the other night, would you rather have played Juventus or would you rather have got to the final of the Europa League? I said, I'd rather go to the final of the Europa League.
You look at some of the teams in the
Aye,
Europa
exactly.
League,
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. No,
Chelsea, and Man City in it, or did they go straight out? But there's some good, very strong Bucharest, there's some really strong teams.
Of course there is. But I just think we'd have a different mindset if we went into the Europa.
Aye, maybe.
A different
See,
expectation
for me,
level, an expectation
you
to do
mentioned
something.
the word I was going to say. This season in Europe has been beyond all my expectations.
Oh, aye.
Far beyond. You think when we were sitting against Helsinki with 5-10 minutes to go and they needed one goal to put us out of Europe?
Aye, altogether.
Altogether. Season finished.
Not even
game over.
parachuting.
And do you know, look, from coming that last 10 minutes where you're biting your fingernails to where we got to, outstanding achievement, and the
one in
players have
Moscow.
developed so much.
What was
and
the
learned
latest
so
we
much.
could have went into the Europa? What
The
was
last
what was the
32?
last teams? No, but from our point of
Helsinki,
view.
it was the next game, Helsinki.
So we could have come out of the Champions League groups into the Europa.
Yeah.
If we were third.
Third. Yes.
We could also get beat with Helsingborg out of the Europa League.
Aye. So it would have been sacrificing the Juventus game. That's it.
Aye.
But it is true what they say. I mean, the exposure. Neil
You
Lennon.
could have beaten We could have won in the Europa League and got beat just the same.
Aye.
You know what I mean?
I know,
But
Neil Lennon made a big thing in Sky afterwards of thanking in his interview about thanking Sky and the coverage they brought, and it was quite obviously it was very get it up you all our mainstream media.
I've taken that. I thought that was a Neil Lennon saying. I thought it was a bit of a personal advertisement for Neil Lennon. I take it as.
No,
not at all.
I thought the
it was-
exposure for Celtic has been tremendous.
It has.
and not. I mean, the run up to the Barcelona game at Celtic Park, when they had obviously it was on an hour and a half before the game, and they had the whole celebration of 125 years, the fact that Barca won town, and it was just phenomenal, absolutely.
So
phenomenal.
it was a get it up you the mainstream media in Scotland. Do you think?
I
think because they've not had the recognition. You get beat against Ross County at the weekend there, which we're no doubt going to talk about, but all of a sudden, and don't get me wrong, some of the support is part of this. What Neil Lennon should be getting blooming sacked, or Neil Lennon's got to get a grip of his team. But do you know, you've just came for the last 16 game in the Champions League. What a come down for all those players. I know maybe the attitude of somewhere wasn't right, but to me it was definitely the focus that Celtic haven't got the credit they deserved, in my opinion, from the Scottish mainstream media. Not that I listen or buy any of it, but from what I have seen.
I think the Champions League this year, to be honest, Scottish football had absolutely nothing.
Aye, Celtic had nothing.
Celtic as well. I mean, Celtic's had absolutely nothing, but I mean, Celtic's going to win the Premier League. Rangers are going to win their league. They're miles in front. Queen of the South's miles in front in our league. You know, I mean, there was nothing for them to really talk about.
But
No,
and you
that's
think
the
it would
first
bum up. STV have done it a wee bit. That STV Grant's been quite good at some of the things they've done, and leading up to the Barcelona game and leading up to the first Juve game, when they were doing some video and audio podcasts as well, and they had some Celtic new media guys on. So Paul Brennan was on from CQN.
Gabriel McAuley was on.
He's kind of more mainstream media. But linking those mainstream guys with some of the Celtic media guys, and that was pretty good. But I just don't think the team have had the recognition they deserve.
But we're not surprised. I mean, let's be honest. But I think
But it's just going back to the point you're making about Lenny, and that's what I think he was trying to get at when he was thanking Sky, because I think Sky did probably give the team a little bit more recognition than what our local media have.
Funny enough, actually, when you hear them talking about it, it's very much Neil Lennon as opposed to Lennon. Do you know? And actually, their whole admiration for Neil Lennon
they've
is
got respect.
it's in their voice.
Aye.
They've got respect.
They've got respect
That's
because
exactly what it is.
all they care about is what he is as a football person. They don't care about the fact that he brings it upon himself for all the bombs and bullets that have been sent to him. He deserves it. They've got a respect for him for what he's done because he's a football man, and that's the difference. When you hear any of them speaking, Jamie Redknapp, Ray Wilkins, I can never remember the guy that's in the studio, the main guy, Jeff Shreves.
Stella.
Aye, Jeff Sterling.
Sterling. That's the guy he was talking to.
Aye, and I just think they've got respect for him, whereas the mainstream media are looking for a reason to dig him up. They hope he fails, because invariably a failure for him would mean success for their real favourites. And when you compare what he's had to put up with abuse-wise, having done what he's done, compared to someone like Mr. McCoist, Super Ali, what he's done or not done, then it's
Almost reminds me in some ways of how they kind of treated Strachan, and you see a stark difference for Gordon Strachan when he's on they absolutely love him down south, you know, the way they treat him, and when he's on, and he's very much treated reverently, and they listen to every word he says, because that's brilliant anyway. But and the contrast of that and to how he was treated up here, do you know what I mean? And it almost brought out that kind of narky bit of him, because I think he probably felt it as well. Do you know what I mean?
You just need to look at the shit that he had to put up with at the press conference prior to the St Mirren game. Now, the best thing that Celtic TV has ever done, in my opinion, is actually start to show these pre-match press conferences in their entirety on Celtic TV Freeview, effectively. So it means that we can all sit there and watch it and actually see the context of everything. But all the questions, some of the questions that were asked were an absolute joke. These guys are absolutely brain dead. It's hardly any surprise that Celtic fans who don't just buy the Daily Record or the Sun or any other publication as a matter of course, who actually think about what they're going to do and have a reason not to buy it, it's hardly any wonder we treat them with the absolute disdain that they deserve. The questions, I mean, the first 6 questions were all about the decision the day before, and you could see Lennon was absolutely bristling, and they just kept going.
They're trying to
trip him up,
invoke a reaction.
And then when he says, "Look, I've told you," and then so I'm not answering any more questions, and then that nugget Mark Benstead, who'd asked most of the questions, then said, "Are you proud of your team?" What kind of question is that? These guys lack any intellect whatsoever, in my opinion.
No, I don't think they know exactly what they're doing, and they're no that thick. They've just got an attitude against
Celtic. I mean, it's obviously an anti-Celtic agenda, and most of them will claim that it's completely not. But there's an element of that they can't hide, no matter how much they try.
No,
exactly. Do you know what I mean? You can see it and that's the contrast I'm trying to explain to you. And you're right, actually, what Neil Winnans did on Sky. But that is the contrast. The questioning's all so positive, and Neil, you've did really well, and that kind of thing. And he's saying, well, actually, thanks for the coverage, and that's the way a relationship could be in a.
Well, you look at
an ordinary country.
They're asking about, give us an insight into why you picked that team or why you set the team out, and it's football stuff, and he's so articulate, and they'll say, well, I thought that would happen in the game, and when that didn't happen they decided to try and change it, and actually they're asking questions that are football orientated
and engaging them,
and engaging, and exactly, and trying to and getting his mind working in relation to football, not
try to trip someone
proud
up.
of your team, or surely we need to accept the decision of the QC and move on. Who says we haven't? It's not us that's taking the case against Sefco. It was the SFA or the SPL. Who says we haven't accepted it? We've not put a complaint in. You're asking me every single question about it, so anyway.
What was the Brian McLaughlin question? What happened with Brian?
I think he was tweeting things prior.
I think he quoted that back to Neil Lennon. That's what it was. Appears unhappy,
bristly or unhappy or
angry. It was.
To be honest, he does man nothing new as well. To be perfectly honest, got no respect for him whatsoever.
I think he, through the whole administration, liquidation, Duff and Phelps, he had a bit of a nightmare. Kind of.
What did you call him?
I called him Chris. He's Chris. No, and I called him Brian.
That's what I saw.
I called him Brian McLaughlin.
You had a mare.
Aye. And he said, Brian did have a mare, but I was brilliant. But he had a bit of a nightmare, and I think he compromised any integrity he had with basically regurgitating
journalism.
Aye, that's the word, journalism. Regurgitating anything that came out of at that time the Dead Rangers PR. What were they called again? That Jack Irvine's mobbed.
Media House.
Media House. I know. So anyway, it was. I think.
So what was the question?
The question was, let's just sum up how you sum up this year's campaign.
Oh, aye. So I've said beyond all my expectations in terms of the European campaign. Mm-hmm. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Gave us probably up there with one of my best nights. In fact, one of my best weeks ever supporting Celtic. In terms of, I was at the Mass the night before, the 125th Mass, and then the game against Barca the next night, and it was just rocking. So it's that'll live a long time in the memory and when we're 150 years old as a club, and maybe if I'm still here reminiscing back, that'll be just a fantastic night. That's what Celtic and being part of the Celtic family and supporting Celtic is all about, nights like that. And they don't come along that often, but it was just an amazing night. Just quite emotional, and
privileged to be there.
Everything about it was just absolutely fantastic. I actually thought of Tony Watt sitting watching that game last night and seen the boy just before Barca scored their second, going through hitting the inside of the post, and Tony Watt says, "I scored." I scored. That boy's hitting the inside of the post.
I buried that.
DVD's good, you. I don't know if you've seen the DVD.
No, I haven't.
The one Celtic released.
Of the Mass and the
game.
I have not seen it yet.
Like, the atmosphere, you don't appreciate the atmosphere till you watch the DVD. And that was just Christmas Day, me and Brian and Mark sitting watching it.
Brilliant.
There has been a few lows, but to be honest, the highs have absolutely have made the lows hardly spring into your...
Two Benfica games, you could probably say are the lows.
But even then, at the Benfica games...
The first one actually was less so for me, because it was almost as if Celtic were feeling their way in, and Benfica seemed to accept that, and they kind of...
They were doing the same, I think.
It was a wee bit of kind of
cagey.
backing for it, cagey, and they kind of accepted it. Nothing each wasn't a disaster. I was fairly happy with that. The second one, however, I think, and that was probably part of the learning curve for Neil Lennon, was I think he got it wrong in the second game.
The away game.
But to be honest, that wasn't a low for me. That wasn't the lows I was talking about. I was talking about
the league games,
domestic games, because at that you're playing in the Champions League. You were playing 60,000 people. You 60,000 people who were buzzing. I'm talking about some of their performances at Celtic Park. Their away performances were great for the start of the season. Their home ones were shocking. But the being in the Champions League, and actually the 4 games that got us to the Champions League, has made almost everything else melt away. And
it's camouflaged.
You kind of struggle to think about many of those games that were really poor.
You've got 28 points in the league.
And to be honest, we're sitting here saying, it's been a fantastic season. Because we're not bothered about that.
Can I be honest? I never even seen the game, so this is the first time ever.
It wasn't on.
But I would normally go on a computer and see when I go at it or something like that, Brian.
And surely not, Peter. Surely you don't follow illegal feeds.
No.
Sure. You better cut that out, Vincent.
And it was Thomas who said to me, he says, "Dad, what's the score?" And I put it on, it was 2-0. I said, "No, it's 2-0, so I never bored down it." I just walked away, and the next time I turned it back on at 3-2. I was like, what?
I was on Celtic Quick News,
I was the opposite. I turned off my phone. I didn't look at Twitter. And I watched it at 5:30. Went 2-0 up. You're beauty, that's something. And then they scored. And then last 10 minutes I was like to Siobhan, "This doesn't look good. You're pressing." And then the goal went in, she's like, "I knew it was 3-2, I was just waiting for that goal coming."
Thanks for that.
Well, it was funny, because I was at 6 o'clock Mass, and it was obviously starting live on BBC Alba at 5:30, and Declan, Kevin's son, came in, and with his wee cheeky grin in his face said, "My dad's watching the game. He doesn't know the score." And I was like, "Oh, you're beauty, you'll be happy." Getting to the end of that.
So I take it Declan knew the score?
Aye, he knew the score.
So
but everybody was
on,
scared to tell you.
That's our next subject, so we'll move. I don't want to spend too much time on the Ross County game, but
when did we play them?
So just in terms of, first of all, his lineup. So he brings in. We had Ambrose, Wilson, Gershon, McGeer, Miku, Stokes, Kyle, Ledley, Mulgrew, Hooper. So maybe a couple of surprises. And this one question I had run about this, and I think he's did this a couple of times. Any time he's decided it's a good idea to play Miku, I'm sure he did it. Did he not do it at Inverness as well? Or did he do it the last time at Ross County?
I know, he played at Inverness, so he did. Yeah. When we won.
No, that game, I was thinking of the game prior to that.
You've got to play these guys, Vincent. What's the point of buying these guys if you're not going to play them? They should be good enough to beat Ross County. Let's be honest.
I just don't know if that's the game I would play Miku.
But you've got a big squad there. What you got to do? You know.
Aye, my view in that game is that it was because maybe Fikerlick was there. because I didn't go. I was just back Thursday night. Brian didn't go, and even McKay didn't go. The two of them were meant to be going up and ended up calling off. So I think it's because the flag wasn't there.
Flag wasn't there.
Aye.
But it was quite a strange game actually. We see is once we had went 2-0 up, and we're going to come on to talk about kind of work rate and players who have worked and players who don't. It struck me that the work rate of the Ross County players was far exceeding our team.
Well, that's not the first time that's happened this season with Celtic. They just seem to switch off. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
You seem to get into this cruise control mode at home, and you were talking. Remember the games we were talking about at home? They're unbelievable at home.
They were just passing the ball for
Through
the
their
sake of
motions.
passing it. Yeah.
And that's what they were accusing Bayern Munich of doing tonight. I don't know if you heard the aftermath. They're accusing Bayern Munich against Arsenal. Says, they're just going through the motions here. They thought they were already through, and then Arsenal scored 2 goals.
Yeah. It was poor, and to be honest, that's when you look to kind of. It's fair to be questioning some players. In fact, probably all the players' attitudes. Big Fraser's looked a wee bit ropey since he's come back from his injury. He's not been as commanding as he's been at different points of the season. And the one thing you say when you go against these teams like Inverness and Ross County, what they will do is they'll put in a shift, and you need to compete with that, because if you can compete with that, then your ability invariably shines through. But if you're not prepared to compete and work as hard as they do, then you always run the risk of getting that kind of egg in your face, and that's what's happened.
Did you watch the whole game?
A few times, aye.
So you saw, that kind of energy that Ross County had throughout the second half. You could just, and you're thinking, actually, this isn't looking good at all here, and you could very much see that third goal coming.
I didn't see it, but I had a close escape. Because I normally go to most of the away games, but on Friday night, me and Johnny Mackay were supposed to be going up and discovered Johnny couldn't make it. And big dead slaving at Wishaw, he had the tickets. And but he had a hospital appointment the next morning, and he said, well, I can maybe make it and we can still go up. And it turns out the tickets fell through, and we didn't make it up. So I saved myself a 4-hour drive up there, a 4-hour drive back, and watching that in between.
When you disappeared to the toilet there, I was actually explaining it was your fault.
All right, for no going.
Because there wasn't anybody who could look there, so you didn't go, Johnny didn't go, I didn't go, and we didn't have the flag there. So it was probably because the flag wasn't there that was the real cause.
Aye, the flag wasn't there.
But no, I've got to say, performances like that don't do the players' reputations any good, because it kind of shows that they think they're on easy street. And back to the point, made a number of changes, and those players should be good enough to come in and carry Celtic, especially going 2-0 up. They went 2-0 up against certainly 1-0 up against the run of play, 2 up, and a couple of minutes after they scored the first to get the second. At that point, they should be driving home that advantage. And you look
at the post, actually.
You look at a Barcelona, for example, and Barcelona would still keep working, and that's why they end up demolishing lots of teams and lots of occasions throughout the season, 4s and 5-0. And we should have done it on Saturday, be 2-0 up. Fair enough, if we'd lost the first goal and they had held on to it, then that's maybe just one of those things. But you're 2-0 up and then you just treat it like a training match. That is unacceptable for any Celtic player.
Neil Lennon must be whatever here he's got, must be tearing out his head. He must be like us frustrated with this team. I've said before, is this the worst team you've ever seen? I don't mean it like, I don't mean they're the worst ability team, but they're the worst team I've seen.
Jekyll and Hyde.
Aye, for that, you get really frustrated with this team because you expect too much of them, I think. But
they've had great highs, but they've also went to quite low depths as well.
I mean, they blew 2 trebles in 2 years. I mean, without a doubt. You know what I mean? You'll never get better chances to win trebles than you've had these last 2 years.
Aye.
You know?
Aye. Yep, I can't argue with that. I think our manager's still learning, and I think some of the players are still learning. And
you got this Dundee United game on the horizon at Hampden.
Aye.
You're not looking forward to it. I mean,
I think we should just, do something with Hampden. Can we not just knock it down? Demolish it. Get a wrecking ball. Wrecking Ralph. Get him in there.
I think they'll play well on Saturday. I think they'll demolish Aberdeen on Saturday. I really do. At Parkhead, I think.
We're going to come on to that. But Neil Lennon did come out afterwards and talk about
Vincent,
some of the
that's your
players.
fourth biscuit.
It's only a second. Some of the players having their eye on, have they decided that they're on their way out already?
See, when you brought the
something like
biscuits, you didn't tell us they were just for you.
I've only had two.
Sorry.
So he seemed to think that some of them had their eye on their move already.
I think you could. I've seen that in Big Victor in many games.
I've heard Neil Lennon in some of his press conferences, especially around, I need to rest players, they're tired, you need to, and this and that. As you go back to Barcelona, did you hear the Barcelona coach ever come out and saying, my players are tired,
Look at
I need to rest them?
Messi never gets rested.
We keep on going back to
Does he want
Barcelona.
to? He'll
That's
just
it, play
want
every
to be
single
dropped
game.
for their equivalent to the Diddy Cup as he does it. He wants to play in that as well. You know what I mean? Which is, but
There's another time I brought up in another podcast was about, remember the Kilmarnock game? I think it was a Kilmarnock game. There was a substitution. I brought this up before about Chris Commons.
Aye.
He thought he was getting took off.
That's right. Aye.
And
And he ran over.
Aye, it wasn't him.
And he went like, no, it's no you. And he was like, it's
Enough.
Aye.
You know, that's the kind of, you can imagine Lionel Messi running there to say, oh, is that me gaff? No.
Take me.
You know what I mean? That's what you're talking about attitude. Their attitude at times is stinking. Absolutely stinking. Especially in domestic action.
But, I mean, I think we're going to come on to this as well, but can you give that to a player? If a player hasn't got that, can you actually transplant that? Because I'd like to think that all of us, because we're fans and we're crazy about Celtic, I wouldn't have any of the ability, as you well know,
Aye.
but I would have all the
Motivation.
and work rate and all that.
I think that's what it is. It is, if you can only kind of motivate so much, it's got to come within the individual themselves. They've got to be self-motivated to do it. You know yourself. At work, any is at work, someone tells you to do something, it's a lot more difficult doing that thing than what it is motivating yourself to do it, because you're wanting to achieve a goal or reach a height. It's far easier if you're self-motivated to do that than to listen to someone else doing it. So it comes down to the individual players, and then you need to pick. It's up to Neil Lennon to identify the guys that have that motivation in themselves, within them.
So that's possibly my question.
Going in that team again, Vincent?
Is this team lacking in that? We've got Foster, we've got Ambrose, Wilson, Gershon.
Right, leave that now. Ambrose, Wilson, Gershon. Ambrose. What do you think?
He's not been the same player since he came back, I don't think. But I think that mistake early on against Juve, he's not really recovered from.
But I would look at Neil Lennon as culpable in some respects, in that he's not playing what I regard as the best central defensive partnership every single week. Before, we've not kept a clean sheet since Dundee on Boxing Day. And all the games, our strongest partnership at centre-back has always been Wilson and Ambrose. And the amount of times, even last Wednesday at Fir Park, he brought a sub on. It looked as if it was going to be Wanyama that would move into the centre of the midfield, and he puts Wanyama at centre back and put Ambrose forward into midfield. That just doesn't make any sense to me. No sense whatsoever. And that's where you look at the manager and think, Neil, but what game are you watching here, son?
I think he's Wanyama's departure. I think that's what he thinks Ambrose will play.
Number two.
But why has he signed Rogic, and why has he signed? I mean, he's got a plethora of midfield players in there.
Yes, I agree with you. I just think that's his head.
I've
seen him doing that a couple of times, put Ambrose into midfield.
And so that, in my opinion, the two of them should be the first two names in this team sheet at centre back. As a
example
partnership.
you gave of the Wednesday night game against Motherwell weakened both the defence and the midfield in one single move.
Yeah. And it goes back to what, and this is...
And back to the team and just beat us. Juventus.
Yeah. But you also, managers, often you look at, when Martin Neal was the manager, I used to sit and think, Martin, what are you doing? Because you've got Chris Sutton, when fully fit, is the best centre forward partner for Henrik Larsson.
Sorry. Best centre-forward partnership for Henrik Larsson. Yet you would play John Hartson there, but you wouldn't have encouraged your convictions to drop Big Sutton. You would play him in midfield, you'd play him at sweeper, you'd play him at centre-half, you'd play him anywhere else just to play him. And that weakened the team. We lost the cup final against Rangers when we get beat 3-2, and he caused 2 of the 3 goals.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but I know what you're trying to say. But
play players in the best positions.
What he tried to do was he was trying to get the big players in the team. Now you're right, he was in some ways weakening the team, but in actual fact I wanted Hartson and Sutton in that team because they were 2 fantastic players, and to his mind he's thinking that's my strongest team, but they're not necessarily the best players in that position. Do you know what I mean?
You pick a team based upon.
But he
just chose 11 individuals almost and said, go out and play, and you can't do that. And that's why Ambrose should be centre-back and Wilson at centre-back, because that's been the best, consistently all season, has been the best partnership. And see that, Rogney? Any time he comes up, any player who's got a physical presence, he just gets ragdolled all over the pitch.
What was the guy said? Did he? I never seen that. I never watched the game there. I think you watched it either, Brian. Did he play with 3 at the back? Is that what he was doing?
A mixture, and he's done this.
I started that,
and this was only from commentary that he had played a mixture of 3,
Ambrose, Wilson,
and then 4-4-2.
And who was his 2 wing backs then?
McGeoch and
Ezagere.
Oh, surely not.
Aye, Ezagere.
No, it wasn't Ezagere. Was it
Ezagere on the left hand side? Wilson.
That's the wrong team. Is that?
Huh.
That's the Juventus team.
Anyway,
it was McGrew left back then.
Just he had a nightmare with 2 games as a year against Juventus, I thought.
Did you? No, I didn't. I did. Yeah, I thought he was quite good the first game.
Yeah, that team should be.
Bullwell, he was terrible.
Can I make a point? This is one I was mulling over. Just when you were talking there, Brian, about motivating players and stuff like that. And it takes me back. We spoke about this in our podcast before when you were talking about managing players, how successful we've been about bringing in, the players that were brought in. However, it was a very telling comment that Neil Lennon made in one of his press conferences, and it was just a roundabout. He was almost saying that he hadn't actually sat down with the players that they'd signed, if you know what I mean. So they'd done a bit of the kind of analysis and the scouting and all of that kind of thing, and he's watched DVDs and he's maybe went and watched, but he's never actually sat down and spoke to the players. And that, for me, is the bit that's missing out of this team. When you're talking about a leader rising within this team and having somebody there who could motivate. If Neil Lennon hasn't had the opportunity to sit down and speak to players, you're almost saying that these players won't necessarily have that, and he wouldn't know whether they did or didn't, but seems to think that's okay. So you're signing a player on ability, which is all well and good, and most of these players have been a success, but he has very little insight into whether they have the mental strength.
I disagree. I think that's where there has been a bit more work done on the kind of soft skills round about the players. So it's not just around their ability, it is around how they'll fit in, and that's where I think one of the main reasons why these guys have been successful in coming to Scotland and been fitting into the team, into a strange culture, because they've got the mental ability to be able to do that. I think that's been a big thing for Celtic. I think that's quite
different from somebody coming to a foreign country who's able to settle in and accept the culture, all of that. What I'm talking about is what we've just been talking about, somebody who's actually got that mental strength, because we're looking in this team and thinking that's a pretty good team.
Who's
when
your
they're
captain?
when they're up against it, there's something missing.
Well, and it's almost that. There's a name missing out of it though, Scott Brown. And he's the guy for me that you do see that.
I've passed the captain's armband about this year like that. It's like a toy. Yeah. It really is.
Aye, who is the captain?
I'd like to see how many captains Celtic's had this year.
There's no many that haven't had it.
You know what I mean?
Because Scott Brown's been injured quite a bit. Obviously he's
I think they had 3
problems.
captains against Malone, I'm not sure. It might be right.
I think they did pass it. Okay, let's not dwell any longer on Ross County. Let's have a wee look forward to the Aberdeen game this Saturday. Who thinks we're going to scalp them? Is it you,
I do.
Peter?
I do. I think we'll come out all guns blazing on Saturday. I think we'll destroy Aberdeen.
Aye.
I do. I really do. I think we'll win about 4, maybe 5-0.
That's a draw then, huh?
I'm going to sign a note of caution because I made a 3-0 prediction prior to the game at Fir Park, and I couldn't have been more wrong in that night. So I hope you're right, Peter, but I've got to say it's a bit difficult actually predicting how Celtic are going to turn up this season, because there's so many games that you think, right, that's us, turn the corner, and then all of a sudden they kick you in the balls.
It's right, exactly that. What team turns up?
Is this the 3 league defeats in a row then? Motherwell, Ross County, have we won one in between now?
No, that's the 2 league games.
Unfortunately, my wish not to win the league during Lent looks likely to come true. Do you know when we can?
The Hibs game now.
So the soonest we can.
Well,
win it
no,
is
you could win it in the St Mirren game if both Motherwell and Inverness and possibly Ross County as well need to get beat.
So that's so
I don't know how that
Motherwell
works.
need to win those their next 2 games, because the St Mirren game's on Easter Sunday. Who wants to win it at 12:45 at New Love Street
No,
on
but
Easter
that wasn't
Sunday?
the question. It was when could we win
the
it?
soonest. So potentially we could win it against St Mirren, but it's likely to be Hibs. So that's the
More
6th.
like
The way that stadium playing.
we're waiting to see who we get after the split. I think Hibs at home looks the most likely
But there's still a requirement.
for Motherwell to drop points.
No, there's not, because we're 16 points ahead of Motherwell.
15.
Right, okay, so they need to drop something now.
Well, we're 16 before the weekend. They drew and we get beat. I think. No doubt our hosts get the league table there, been organised and
Oh,
all.
aye.
Aye, can I see it? Oh, it's not there, Vincent.
I saw it, yeah.
Listen, it's not the same with the Richard, please come back.
So I hope they win. I want to
Difference, isn't it?
I want to make sure we win it on that day. That's a 3:00 kick-off.
I was going to say,
on a Saturday.
if
It
we
would be
could win it
nice.
against Hibs, maybe they can't move it for TV now, it's too late.
No, I think there's already games organised and stuff. The TV games.
And that is Bampot book launch night. That night.
Just
So he seems to be timing these
Aye,
very
Paul,
much.
well, do you know what? See if you release 30 books a year, you're right. You're bound to have a book launch when Celtic are winning the league. Unbelievable, that man. I don't know. It must have a team of ghostwriting slaves in Edinburgh.
Right, okay, we'll wrap up.
See, on Aberdeen, they've no. Just to finish on that, when you were asking the question, they've apparently not scored in 6 home games this season. Out of 12 or something. Half their home games have not even scored. And it goes back to see the state of Scottish football. What does Craig Brown
I've got a beat on it about that.
Wait, let me finish. What does he bring to Scottish football? And then you see any manager's job that comes up, the names that are bandied
Jimmy
about for the
Calderwood.
manager's job: Jim Jeffries, Billy Brown, Jim what's his the tanned guy,
Jimmy Calderwood.
Just those guys are as culpable in terms of the state of Scottish football, in terms of the way teams play.
Yeah.
It's refreshing a bit more. I've got a wee soft spot for St Mirren because the guy tries. I don't necessarily like him, but at least they try and play football.
Yeah.
They try and pass the ball and play football.
Actually, say I wouldn't say it's they're culpable, but I know what you mean. The people, the boards who put these people, poach Craig Brown from Motherwell because they think he's going to do a job. Craig Brown's nearly 70-year-old. What is he? It's the board that want to put someone like that in position. I don't understand it. You look at Hibs. Pat Fenlon's come in,
trying to play football.
Aye, and I totally agree with your point. Your point is, why are they looking at these old guard people who fail at one club, move to another club and fail, move to another club and fail, move to another club and fail? It's guys like Steve Lomas coming in and trying to get a team to play a bit of football. Pat Fenlon coming in to try and Danny Lennon. Even the guy from Hamilton Accies, fair enough, Hamilton Accies went down, but Billy Reid. And it's actually refreshing.
I think if you look at a league now, well, we've not got a league because Vincent's not brought it, but how have you looked at the league now?
Aye, Celtic are top, that's all you need
It's
to know.
it's quite encouraging because the managers, which you were just talking about, they're not doing that. They're doing the
But
bottom.
even
Aye.
Derek Adams,
Derek
you know what I mean?
Adams at
And
Ross County.
Derek Adams,
Aye.
Stuart McCall's, they're all up the top.
And see, to be honest, I think as a manager, I really like Terry Butcher as a manager.
I like
Argentina.
I think, I think, and you're right. See, when you see guys like that near the top of the division, and then you see guys like Craig Bowen languishing near the bottom, that kind of justifies it in itself why these teams are actually doing
So
quite
just
well.
on Argentina, and obviously the announcement tonight of a new pope coming from Argentina.
Francis the First.
So see when we sing Argentina to Terry Butcher, is that going to be
Construed as sectarianism.
as against the offensive
Behaviour at football.
behaviour at football legislation?
You could be.
Do you think you could be lifted for that?
Criminal act. I think you might be.
I think we
I
need,
think we'll
we need to know.
clarification. Okay, that wraps us up for the first part. Thank you very much.
Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, 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 tock.
Okay, welcome back, guys.
You've had 3.
So we've established who's at the biscuits.
Peter.
Right? I've had 2. Brian,
I've had
you've
1.
You've had 3. And Peter, you've had 2. Is that right? Does that work out?
There only
You've had
was,
4.
there only was, what was there?
There's
4?
8.
There's 8.
8 in the packet.
Kevin's
Back.
looking a
So
bit
if he's
guilty
at
there. He's
two,
supposed to
then-
be off them for then.
I'm looking longingly, Vincent, knowing I can't touch them.
Right, we'll take them at your road. Okay, guys, on to a few hot topics. I know we don't particularly like talking about the Deed Club, but I thought we would maybe mention we've not had a podcast since Lord Nimmo Smith came out with his ruling. What was that all about? A £250,000 fine for a Deed Club, no title stripping. So if paying players more money than any other club in Scotland and more than you can actually afford doesn't give you an unfair advantage, what does, Brian?
God, I was amazed at the verdict. I can't say I was totally surprised because even we had the podcast just before it was announced and the week before, and there was still that wee bit in all of us in the back of all our minds that actually they're going to get away with this. I think you were vociferous about it, Kevin. I just thought the evidence was so compelling that there was no possibility that an independent commission could in any way find them not guilty. But I suppose they still found them guilty. It's more the punishment around it in the statements. One friend I've got, Blantyre Kev, he said to me that he read the full written statement that Lord Nimmo Smith released, and he said, if David Murray, Charles Green and all the most intelligent Rangers fans together had sat down to write a statement, they couldn't have done it better than what Lord Nimmo Smith done it. And it was just an unbelievable verdict. You've hit the nail on the head. How could it possibly be construed as no
Sporting advantage.
Sporting advantage gained, competitive
So how
advantage
important
gained.
was the registration officer of the
Aye,
SFA?
Well, that goes back to Sandy Bryson, who, interestingly, was called Alexander Bryson in the release. I don't know why, I don't know what connotations there is with him changing his name from Sandy to Alexander, but he was involved with the George Cadetti case.
Yes.
And Ernie Walker at that time had fingered him. Had pointed the finger.
Jim Farry.
Jim Farry. Ernie Walker. Jim Farry had pointed the finger at him being integral, core to that decision to delay it and involved. I've also heard that he was involved with the Dallas email scandal and a be exclusive for Tic Talk.
Allegedly.
I don't know whether they forwarded on the email or received the email, but
Allegedly.
The email wasn't alleged. The email was proven to be sent. I heard that he may have been one of the recipients or may have been one of the guys that sent it on.
Allegedly.
Aye, allegedly. See, if you say allegedly, does that just get you off the hook, guy? Allegedly.
We'll check with that.
So, anyway, it's interesting that he has a totally different view on the registration process and the registration rules, entirely contrary to UEFA's view on those very same rules.
And contrary to what they've executed against other clubs
in the past.
In the recent past.
Yeah.
Not even the long and distant past,
and
the
you
recent
said-
past.
So with this logic, no, if they were registered at that time, even though it was wrong,
Aye.
Because
the
it
very
hadn't been
fact that they
picked
were
up.
registered, then that's fine.
Because the
Is that
error,
right?
because the error hadn't been picked up,
Aye.
they were effectively registered. Had it been,
Correct.
until such points as the incorrect registration is identified.
Right. Aye. Load of rubbish.
In my opinion,
Absolute
it
stitch
shows the institutionalised nature of what we are going against. In my opinion,
So
Sandy
you question
Bryson
the
has had
independence of that panel?
no. In my opinion, Sandy Bryson has had 9 months. Him and others.
Does he work closely with the president of the?
You would imagine the president.
I would just want. Do they
would be
work
here.
in similar areas?
Who's that? Is that Campbell Ogilvie?
Yeah.
I believe it.
Who had an EBT?
And
He has an email.
to be honest, I would have had 9 months to put whatever spin, think about the spin that they wanted to present, and that just goes back to, we all know that Rangers were the establishment club. We've all seen very overt ways in which that has manifested itself, but I think this is the type of subtle stuff that takes generations.
But isn't it very subtle?
No. I think this is the type of stuff that takes generations to weed out, Vincent.
Right,
This isn't stuff
Aye.
that you just changes overnight or in a year or 2 years. This is stuff that takes generations.
No,
to,
but- no, it's more
sorry,
galling.
Are you disagreeing with Chick Young that says they've been punished enough then, is that?
I don't go there. I think it's
See, you know what's galling about it is their support still think have been hard done by.
This is-
This is what I was going to move on to. That my take on this Nimmo Smith thing is I couldn't care less, to be perfectly honest. I got to the stage I couldn't care less. I knew there was absolutely no chance they get stripped of titles. I couldn't see how they could get stripped of titles. I'm not a legal mind by any means, but I don't see how they could prove that these players wouldn't have signed for Rangers. I mean, if you went and asked them, would you have signed for Rangers even though you wouldn't have got an EBT, they would have turned around and says, aye.
But that wasn't the
I
point,
don't think
Peter.
that was the
Aye,
point.
I know.
The
I
point
know
was
what you're going to say.
they weren't registered correctly, which would allow
I know,
them to
I know.
actually be valid players to play in the competition.
I'm no arguing with
Wasn't
that.
even.
I'm no arguing with that, right? No arguing with that.
What are you arguing about then?
I couldn't see them get stripped of titles. I just couldn't
No,
see
no,
it.
no.
I couldn't. The mere I heard about it, I just couldn't see it happening. There had been riots in the streets.
You've touched on it, Kevin.
But what annoyed me more than anything else after it was the triumphalism, as if they were.
Aye, I know.
They'd won.
It's unbelievable.
I was driving. I don't finish till 6 o'clock at night most nights. So I'm driving home, and it was the night of the Nimmo Smith the announcement. Derek Johnson and Gordon Dale were on Radio Clyde.
The luminaries.
Right, and Jim Delahunt. Now you should have heard the rant that Derek Johnson went on. Honest, I wish that I taped it. Everybody's got an agenda against Rangers. What exactly have Rangers been found guilty of? What have they done wrong? This is the way they're going on now.
Aye.
But that's where I lose the will to live, because I couldn't care less what they think. That's why I don't listen to them. That's what I mean. I really could. There's no intelligent enough to give you a decent answer.
See, with this,
No, but that's you've got to realise that they're not influencers to us, but they're influencers to
You should have heard the phone calls after it.
the brain dead people
Exactly.
who are actually listening to them, both on the Sevconian side, but also some of our support.
Aye.
Some of our support who still, some within our own group, who come on here, who still buy the Daily Record every single day. And it's
Surely no.
It's,
Surely no, Brian.
But that's my point. That they are
That's what
opinion
they're being
formers,
fed,
and
aye.
people then react to that. And and Seth Conians are like, oh, big Derek's right, by the way, blah, blah, blah. And then other guys are like, Derek, you're wrong, we think it's this. And
they're telling her, they keep continuing to tell a lie till it becomes the truth.
And that's what's still happening. It's still very
But see, with the SFA,
Yeah.
in relation to this, and not just the SFA, the authorities in relation to all this, to me what they've done, and you touched on it in the past 9 months in terms of preparation, they've mapped out what is the best outcome possible, and what's the outcome we can achieve,
get away with.
and then they've got the path. So they've started with, this is what we need to achieve, and then they've had the path to get that, and that's been in all areas of this. So the dual contract situation, how Sevco got the Old Rangers membership transferred to themselves, when how they met none of the criteria for having that membership. None of the criteria. Everything was all the SFA rules in relation to that criteria were subverted, and then the dual contracts thing, where they've come up with what's the best outcome we can achieve. Right, here's how we can achieve it.
Here's how we're going to
and
get
that's
it.
how they worked back. That's what I see from this.
They found them guilty, and they found them not guilty, if you know what I'm trying to say.
They found them absolutely guilty, but didn't have the balls to give them the punishment that merits a crime. And see, I said it in the podcast before, it didn't matter to me so much whether we got the titles.
No, I actually didn't want the titles.
What I wanted was them to be stripped, for the world to know that they have been found guilty. So the thing now is, well, we've kept the titles, so we're not really guilty. Yeah, you are absolutely guilty.
Oh, this is what he was
100%. And I'll tell you one thing it's done to me. It's the fire is burning deep inside me again, because I thought I'd outgrown my frustration and annoyance. I thought I'd got beyond that and I was moving on. But see, I just drove about listening to the tunes, and that night I was just getting frustrated.
Another point with this, and this is possibly controversial, I've been a reasonable supporter of Peter Lawwell. I know a number of the Celtic support have issues, but see, in this particular situation with the LNS, the Lord Nimmo Smith result, I think he has been an abject failure as CEO of Celtic in not representing the shareholders, which are unimportant to me, but they should be important to him. He has a legal responsibility.
No, I'm a shareholder, so.
But more importantly, the fans. He has failed, and totally failed to represent Celtic fans, who are the club, in this process. And it should have come out. The statement that Celtic released, I thought, was very, very weak. And we keep on hearing that he's doing things in the background, and Celtic can't not our battle, and all the rest of it. This impacted on every Celtic supporter for a number of years, a long number of years, and it impacted financially for. And it's, as I say, it's the lesser of two evils for me. But it impacted financially for every single shareholder in terms of the value. He has a legal responsibility as CEO of a PLC to represent the best interests of his shareholders, and I don't think he's done that. He's a far cleverer guy than me.
I don't think he's done it publicly. I don't know if he's done it privately, but actually I think us making it us against them, which I think that's what would happen if we came out very publicly and said whatever. I think if he isn't working in the background, that is very much a dereliction.
And that's where there's no evidence that would possibly.
But it's hard to find evidence for that.
No, there's no evidence coming out in terms of any of the results of any of this process that he is doing that. And I think I'm now coming round to the mind that he's desperate for Rangers to be back in the SPL.
I think
desperate.
Can I be honest? I think the Celtic supporters desperate for Rangers to come back.
But no,
Aye.
entirely disagree.
Well, you look at the
I think
terraces
there are.
every week.
Entirely
There's need to
disagree
there.
with that. It doesn't.
No,
It's
no,
two
you can't-
separate
you can't-
issues.
You can't disagree with it. You can disagree that if you're talking about the entire Celtic support, there will be people who will want them back, who are missing the buzz of the Glasgow derby and the current manifestation of Sevco to them would just be the reintroduction of a Glasgow derby anyway, regardless of whether they're old co, new co, any co.
Yeah.
I don't share that, but there is absolutely thousands of Celtic fans who do, because thousands decided to give up their season tickets at the end of last season, and the only reason that you can possibly see for that, or the vast majority, is down to them not being in the league.
But what Peter said and what I disagreed with, he said is the vast majority of Celtic fans, and you see that every week. I don't think you see it every week because the stadium's more than half full, so that's no the vast majority straight away.
Okay, we'll certainly come back to this subject. I don't think it's dead yet. Second
know
hot
what?
topic.
The Huns are dead.
Second hot topic. Goal line technology. I don't know if any has managed to pick up the.
I just seen the tweets of it and then seen it on the news.
Seen it.
How?
I watched the game.
Where was the linesman? I've not seen the linesman's
Well,
position.
The linesman was.
They wheeled out the usual Muppet. What would you call him? The
Kenny
next day?
McDowell?
No, Kenny McDowell.
Kenny Clark.
Kenny Clark, sorry.
Now his clarification of it was the free kick, that the referee was in the right position, the linesman was in the right position. When the linesman realised that he was going to have a clear shot at goal, he was going to shoot for goal, he has to then take off and run in that direction. And but he couldn't possibly, given the pace he was running at and the angle, he couldn't possibly have seen whether the ball crossed the line.
Cretin.
That was
Kenny Clark is a cretin.
That was his explanation the next
So
morning.
the linesman can't walk and see simultaneously?
No.
Or, sorry, run and see simultaneously?
Well,
Well, I have to admit, I'm sitting in my living room and I thought it was a goal.
Peter, you're
No,
blind, and
right,
if
there
you
you go. Peter,
thought it was
yeah.
a goal...
I thought it was a
there we
goal.
are.
And you've seen, and you were looking at it
I
from
thought it
30
was a
mile
goal.
away.
I thought it was a goal. Right. So how they never seen it was a goal?
No, so goal line technology has inevitably got to come. However, goal line technology is designed for when... goal line technology, the biggest argument for it is when there's a marginal decision, is over or is it not over. That was 3 feet at least over.
At least a
At
yard.
least. It was actually closer to the net than it was the goal line.
Remember the Motherwell one that we got disallowed? At
Meowby.
David
Meowby.
Cooper.
Meowby.
We ended up getting beat or drawing that game.
Draw,
I think we...
3 each was.
Aye, we definitely lost points anyway, but
No,
and it was
we
similar
just
to that.
we won 5-1 and it should have been 6-1.
That's
no,
another game you're
that's a
talking about.
different game.
It's different.
No, we dropped points that game.
Dropped points,
We either
3 each.
I was
got
one of the
beat or-
games a couple of weeks before Seville,
And 3 each.
2003.
Definitely
and
lost
we lost the
points, I
goal. We
remember
lost the
it.
league in goal
Definitely
difference.
3 each.
Right, okay.
This game. But Brian's talking about Meow.
But I think the thing that struck me was, I'm sure the bill was quoted as something like £300,000 to implement this technology.
I think the guy was quite right. What he wrote. I can't remember who it was. I think it was ref. He says this only happens once or twice a year.
It's Kenny Clark.
Was it Kenny? I don't think it was Kenny Clark. It was somebody else.
I heard him saying that on the news, that it only happens a couple of
He
times
is
a
right.
year.
I mean, he's basically right about that, but
I think they should take it out of the refs' wages.
Yeah, I just
It's
think
as blatant a one as I've seen, though. It was
why don't we
absolutely-
get the 2 guys that stand behind the goals in the Champions League?
Aye, but that's
Goal line.
expensive over a season. It's expensive, and you need to pay them. What's the return on investment
They're
on the
useless, I know.
system?
Useless.
Yeah, I've got to say, that's not even a close decision. That's diabolical, absolutely diabolical. And if you're a Hibs fan, you must be doing your thing. Because I didn't intensely dislike Hearts, and I think Hibs are all right because they wear green and white. But
they very rarely ever turn over Hearts, no matter how bad Hearts are and how good Hibs seem to be. They never ever turn them over, and I've got to say, I mean, nothing each last 20 minutes or something like that.
It's 10 minutes to go.
For the ball to be 3 feet over the line, not even close. Just the linesman should get demoted. And the thing is, they never come out, and you never know you never know if somebody's just saying, well, son, these things happen.
No transparency, no accountability.
Yeah. Okay then. The next one, I was just going to have a wee word about Brian, the Lions Roar Again night that you and I attended.
Yes.
What a superb night that was.
Magic, absolutely magic. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And it was great seeing so many of the Lisbon Lions there. And do you know, it was really good the way they had done it. I don't know the agenda you went in and you had a couple of drinks and stuff, and then they showed the first half of the game, extended highlights of the first half, and at half time you got a pie and a bovril, and then extended highlights of the second half, and the atmosphere and the goals went in. It was brilliant.
So about it was a sellout, so there was about 500 people at that. A tenner a head.
I think it was maybe a bit more than that, because it seats up the back. I reckon there would have been maybe 600 there. And Archie McPherson spoke so eloquently and very, very fondly of Celtic, and particularly that team, the Lisbon Lions, and wee Bertie Auld was outstanding, and just listening to him, it was a real privilege being there.
Absolutely.
And you were at the Shamrock table, weren't you?
I took a table of 10 actually. I saw it advertised, I'm sure it came through, it was probably Paul Brennan actually, Celtic Quick News. Immediately took a table of 10, a tenner a head, unbelievable value that.
Vincent, that's a big investment for you.
A big investment for me.
You're not known for making big rash investments like that.
I don't know, a box of Krispy Kremes is...
Krispy Kremes and border biscuits, Brian. Things are changing. Things are changing. Now that I'm up in the Royal Borough.
You're in Rutherglen.
So also got a mention on the stage, I don't know if you clocked that, when Archie McPherson was talking about I've already signed one of my books this evening, because I took along the Jock Stein story that Archie McPherson wrote and got him to sign it. Brilliant, actually, fantastic.
Archie
and then
was very, very good.
I got a photograph of myself and 3 of my sisters in 1981 at Butlin's holiday camp with Bobby Lennox. And Bobby Lennox used to do the training and stuff like that during the summer. So I took it down to him. I said, "Do you remember that?" And he said, it was hilarious. He said, "That was a Thursday." I says, "What?" He said, "I was down there every Thursday." He said, signed it, and he was looking at the picture there. And
he says, "I remember
10.
Yeah,
81
it was. I was 10-year-old.
Aye. He remembered the 3 lasses because they stood out for their footballing ability. She couldn't remember the boy.
You see, I was holding the jackets for that. But aye, the kind of format tonight was watching the first half, second half. We had Pie and Bovril at half time, and then he got all the lines up onto the stage. Archie McPherson compared it, asked them questions, stories, and then they went to the floor. And there was about half a dozen questions for the floor. But Bertie Auld was unbelievable.
You couldn't get a microphone off him, couldn't you?
Anytime you asked Bertie a question, he would take them out and then he would stand up. And he would come to the centre. And then he broke into song at one point, didn't he? It was
absolutely
fantastic.
brilliant.
And then they rounded off the night by saying, if you pay £1 a head in the room next door, they took each table in turn, and you got a picture with a European.
I have to say, just on that, I was with the CQN boys at that, and the CQN table was a lot more handsome than the Carluke Shamrock table.
But I think there's evidence out there on the internet.
I mean, obviously, I boosted the score up a wee bit for the CQNers, but you boys struggled in the old looks department that night, didn't
you? You've got a ginger and grey beard, and he's got a black and grey beard, so I don't think either of you can talk about handsomeness.
Beards are in.
But talking about beards and handsomeness, we were also joined by a celebrity that night. Peter, our old buddy yourself, Brian McCarthy joined us that night.
Of Speed 2 fame.
Yeah. Speed 2 and Shameless.
Aye, that wasn't in the movie, but Vincent, that was on his short list. I guess Speed 2.
So he came over to our table with reminiscing
asking for me?
with Brian. He was very much asking for you. So the last two hot topics is just announcements more than anything else. We'll be having the Willie McLean Memorial Night on Friday the 19th of April this year, so very much looking forward to that. Peter, it's always a good night for the club.
Very good night for the club. I encourage everybody to come along.
Do we still have the football game? No,
we don't have we're not the football game for a few years now. We're all getting too old now, Brian.
Aye, a few injuries.
The knees are going.
Oh, your knees are going.
But it's a quality night where
A lot of guys put an effort in. Bands, various bands play at it.
Is it Richard's brother?
David's band.
David will be
David does a lot of
playing.
work.
They usually get a few turns actually, so the music's usually fantastic.
Usually brilliant. So I'd encourage them to go.
It's hard to get a ticket, so you would better get in quick for those £5 a ticket.
Email us,
Email us.
Shamrock@gmail.com. I think.
Thanks,
Have
Brian.
you got that written down there, Vincent?
No, I knew you would have it. So
No,
thanks.
see you.
Thanks for
lack
putting
of preparation.
Thanks for putting
lack
me
of
at
preparation. So unprofessional.
Why should we reject you here?
I've got an 8-point agenda. Lack of preparation.
Keep going. Somebody's are working on it.
It's now 20 to 12.
What?
Oh, it's only half an hour.
Come on, get a move
Calm
on.
down. The final announcement is
Can we change the
around,
recording date to tomorrow?
Paul Larkin, Bampot book launch, 6th of April is this year. We might actually win the league that day, so he's coincided, Brian. I think you mentioned that earlier. If you bring out that many books, then yeah.
A lot of averages you're bound to hit.
Okay,
A 1 in 2 chance.
so we're on the home straight, guys.
Shambolic.
Okay, thanks, Chico. So, before this week's Tic Talk, I texted the guys, and this week's subject was, I asked you all to think of players from any era who gave everything for the jersey, players who might not have been the most technically gifted, but who left nothing on the park, gave you a real shift every game. Secondly, I wanted you to think of players who might have real skill and talent, but who gave you nothing and left you really frustrated in light of recent events. You might think of a few new ones. And finally, are there any players who might have had both? So who wants to kick us off first?
Well, for me, the player that gave everything was Big Roy Aitken.
Oh, I knew he was going to say that.
Feed the bear.
Feed the bear.
Feed the bear. And I think it was clearly demonstrated when he left and how much we missed him, what he brought to the team. And it wasn't necessarily what he'd done off the ball, what he'd done on the ball or with the ball. It was more how he helped motivate the team, helped drag players with the scruff of the neck through a game, and drag the team through games. And I'm from a young age remember that quite clearly.
He's always the first name that comes up when you talk about attitude and playing for the jersey, and somebody that gave you everything.
And then the second one,
I think their generation,
the second one, maybe had lots and lots of ability, but a total lack of commitment. Mark Viduka.
Oh, yes, good shout.
I thought
good shout.
he many games showed a total lack of commitment, didn't step up to the plate whatsoever when Henrik got his injury, and obviously it kind of culminated in the Inverness 3-1 defeat at Celtic Park when he was going to refuse to go out for the second half. And the guy had lots of talent, and I think he showed that in flashes when he moved on from Celtic and while he was at Celtic and before he arrived at Celtic. But just a terrible attitude to not only the team, total disrespect to the club, to the fans, to the game in general. And just, to me, doesn't matter what skill you've got, an attitude like that just stinks. And
didn't he start well, did it? He signed and then went off in the sick.
I'm away back to Australia because I'm suffering from stress. But the stress of getting 15 grand a week and moving kicked a ball.
Don't know how to spend it.
Aye.
Did you identify anybody who had both, Brian?
He's one of my favourites. Big Sammy. Now, I don't necessarily see all the same way as other fans, but it tends to be that I think when I hear other fans give him abuse, he kind of has a bit of both with that. I think I love the big man. He's a cracking player, and but he can be somewhat frustrating. Another one actually that can sometimes get into that is wee James Forrest. When he loses the ball or things don't go his way, he kind of gives up, throws the arms, and just get on with it, pick yourself up and get on with it. Sammy can do a wee bit of that as well.
Does that as well.
Sorry, who? Hooper.
Throwing the arms up out. Ayel Berkovic for me is
belter.
He was the same as Big Viduka.
Aye.
Just had all the natural ability to be a fantastic Celtic player, but do you know what? Celtic was just never ever going to be his club.
No.
Ever.
Do you know, would you know how we used to go to those nights with Martin O'Neill, the manager nights?
Aye.
There was one, and remember they had moved the seats where we sat at that time in the main stand. They had moved all our seats back 2 rows, and this was because they had a complaint from one of the footballers' wives that she was sitting too far back, because the footballers' wives used to sit in the back row in the main stand, and she couldn't see her husband. So during the close season she had put in the complaint, and that was when Martin O'Neill joined. So this was his first kind of meeting with the fans, being manager, and he apologised that he had been asked to move the seats back, and he explained it was Ayel Berkovic's wife that had made this request because she couldn't see her husband play, and they quipped, "It's made no effing difference," because he hadn't played them. So I think the writing was in the wall quite early doors. It was absolutely brilliant,
I've got one to fling in for Gabe Everton. Definitely wasn't the most technically gifted. What about Anton Rogan? He just sprung into my mind as soon as I wrote this down.
I'll never ever forget the goal we scored with his badge.
Yes, that's right.
It was Andy Walker's
badge.
Andy Walker's chest.
Oh, absolutely brilliant.
But a guy certainly no most technically gifted, but gave absolutely everything.
Missed a penalty in the Scottish Cup final as well, didn't he?
And to be honest, that was probably the ending of him, unfortunately.
That's the only time a Scottish Cup final has been decided in penalties.
11-10,
and the only reason they were having penalties that day was because they changed the rules for that season because Scotland had a game the next week and they couldn't use Hampden for a replay.
Is that right?
Scotland had a game after it. The Scottish Cup's never been decided in penalties.
Seems as there's never been a Scottish Cup tie brought forward to the Thursday night for television so that we had to go to Rugby Park during the 10-in-a-row season. They always seem to make these one-off changes when it affects us, does it not?
When it's important.
And there was never an extension. Tommy Burns
institutionalised.
Never an extension.
I know that didn't really happen on Thursday, did it?
Vincent, what do you think of?
Peter, go for it.
Obviously, Tommy Burns.
Well, but I
Which
mean,
one?
is that for the players who had both?
He left nothing in the park.
And they had a bit of skill about them.
Good. Johnny Doyle was another one.
I like that one.
Peter, good shout.
Very good shout.
The other one, if you say, is what he wore, but he was absolutely, and I emphasise this, hopeless in my view, was Peter Grant.
Oh, Mr. Season.
You're lucky. You are lucky.
I have to say, I agree with that.
So I've got one for
My favourite.
had all the skill in the world, but just didn't have the work ethic. Andy Ritchie.
Andy Ritchie, that's out of my
was just a fantastic player, but just strolled about as if he ruled the world.
Paddy McCourt's a bit like that.
Exactly.
There's another one.
What about Juninho? Does he fall?
Well, that was the next guy I was going to bring up.
God, I forgot about him.
Juninho, just when you mentioned Ayel Berkovic, he sprung straight into my
I
head.
blocked him out of my mind.
Juninho. And what about Raphael Shine?
Well,
severe. He
we
had
didn't
nothing.
really see any of it.
He had nothing.
A player who had both, I would venture.
Henrik.
Henrik Larsson was the one I had in my mind in terms of work ethic and had everything.
That's Richard Hartson.
Left nothing.
There's loads. I mean, Paolo Di Canio for me as well.
Well, Cadet you could put in the same bracket as...
Berkovic.
No, it's
Paducah.
Paducah I was going to say. He wasn't
Pierre.
He wasn't right.
Pierre in there, or no?
No, that would be a bit harsh. I would say Pierre's.
I like Pierre. I left him.
I did like him, but I wouldn't say.
But once he wanted to go,
That was it.
that was it.
But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about people when they wanted to go, they ended up chucking in the towel. We're talking about people who had kind of chucked in the towel and they were still getting paid and they had no intentions of leaving. Do you know what I mean?
You could see, that guy Liam Brady signed, he was supposed to be the greatest thing.
Paul
Stuart
Bums Slater.
Stuart Slater.
Oh, that grass
Jesus.
cutter. What was his?
Bums
that
off
was his
seats.
nickname.
Bums.
You'll get thumbs off seats, side exits.
I think the guy had all the ability to in the world, he'd done nothing for Celtic. I think the club was too big for Tony Cascarino. Because he left Celtic, he was
I
going
don't know
goals
if
for fun in France.
but Peter Russ. He's
He
taken
was
a
an
bit too
international,
far,
he was
I know.
scoring goals in European Championships and
That's
everything.
right.
But still don't know if he had ability.
I think I was faster than him. But you know what?
But he went
I'll
to France,
never
he was
ever
scoring.
forget him scoring the eyebrows.
right through Gordon's legs.
Brilliant, man.
So we're
Brilliant.
happy with that. So I think, that's been a bit of a marathon
There's been a
tonight, guys.
few
Been quite
points
happy with that.
mentioned
But
there, aye.
that was a good shambolic. So and on that note, we're going
Tommy.
to wrap up. I'm Vincent at Vincenzo Sir on Twitter, and tonight our panel have been.
Peter?
Brian, BJ Mac 67 on Twitter.
There you are.
Kevin.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hail, hail.
Hail.
Hail, hail.
The thing I want to see the most is the Glasgow Celtic score. I've been to Munich, been to Paris and Berlin. I watched injustice fall upon you in Turin, and I've shared the pain and glory with the friends that I have made as I dance from place to place in green and white on a worldwide tin parade.